Hello. I want to do what could best be described as a public information video. I'm doing this for the benefit of literally thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't even know the number of veterans who were exposed to what's called or known as Agent Orange. They were exposed in the Republic of Vietnam. They were exposed while they were in Korea. They were exposed while they were in Thailand. They were exposed while they were on naval ships. They were exposed while they were working on certain cargo aircraft like the C-123. And these veterans who were faithful patriots did what they were asked to do, but they were exposed to Agent Orange. And thousands, untold thousands, died trying to prove that they had been exposed to Agent Orange. And for years, our government did not acknowledge, did not recognize, did not agree. And those veterans who strove mightily to show that they'd been there, that this stuff had poisoned their bodies, poisoned their families, their children in some cases, there was no acknowledgement by the government. It did recognize certain diseases. I'll give it credit for that, but the larger body of service members, the veterans who were exposed, they were denied. But by the change of a public law, that condition has been remedied now. But it was only in 2019, we're talking about 2019, that the government finally recognized and established what was called a presumption of service connection for veterans who served offshore of the Republic of Vietnam. So the statute, United States Code, Chapter 11, Chapter 11 of Title 38 was modified or amended. And I put this up because I really want you to pay attention to the words here. It says here that a veteran who during active military, naval, or air service served offshore of the Republic of Vietnam during the period beginning on January 9, 1962 and ending May 7, 1975, shall be presumed to have been exposed during such service to an herbicide agent unless there is affirmative evidence to establish that the veteran was not exposed to any such agent during that service. Now, those are the key words here, and I'll try later on to clarify what that really means. But the presumption means that if the veteran was in theater, if the veteran was there, whether it was for 1 week or 1 day, they were in theater. They can prove that they were assigned, whether they were TDY there, whatever means they were there, for whatever reasons they were there, then the presumption is established. With the rejection of claims in the past, veterans tried to show by their military assignment or by their what organization they were assigned to or what their job description was. They tried to prove that in the service, in their work, where they slept or where they ate or where they did their military duties, they had to try to prove, I've got this disease, and try to prove it connected to the military unit. Well, what the statute now acknowledges is that if you were in theater, then you were exposed. It's a presumption. You no longer have to prove that you got the disease there. What you have to show is that you were there. That's the difference. And that significantly changes the equation for veterans who were trying to prove a service connection. It significantly changes the equation for spouses, Maybe your spouse died trying to prove that they were affected by this Agent Orange. Maybe you're the child of a veteran who died, and you know that your father or your mother was trying to prove a service connection, and they were denied by the Department of or the Veterans Administration. Well, the change of statute acknowledges now that those rejections were not legitimate. And so I'm doing this public service announcement, is call it information, if you will, because in the last 5 months, and this wasn't an issue that was high on my radar screen, but in the last 5 months, there's been about 4 different situations where I've had conversations with veterans or people who were related to veterans who were struggling with this issue. So I got to digging into it and looking into it, and then I won't say I discovered it, it's there in the statute. The statute had been modified. And it just dawned on me that there may be others who are hurting out there, who were rejected, did not receive any kind of compensation, any kind of acknowledgement. And here's the key. There is no time restriction. If you can, and I'll later in this video show you some things you need to do, but there's no limitation. If you're a family member and you're aware of a cousin or a neighbor or a co-worker, that's why I'm doing it as an information video, because I don't know who you may have had conversation with. But if you're aware of a veteran or the child of a veteran who referred to their parents' efforts to try to get compensated for a disease that they believe was connected to service during Vietnam era, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to reach out. And if I don't reach out to anybody, I'm going to feel a little guilty, because it appears to me that in my conversations with people who were struggling with this, that they weren't aware that the statute had been updated. And their conversation was, well, yeah, my loved one tried, but the VA or the government rejected their claim. Well, the statute was modified, and because of how recent it was, my sense is that it's not been well disseminated, that the statute has been revised. So let me press on down through here, because I want to make clear that it's not just for those who were in the Republic of Vietnam, but also it inserted a section that related to those who were in Korea. And so there's a presumption of herbicide exposure for certain veterans who served in Korea. And it tells you that, and I'm looking at subparagraph 2 there, it shall be considered to have been incurred or aggravated in the line of duty in the act of military, naval, or air service, notwithstanding that there is no record of evidence of such disease during the period of such service. Let me clarify what that means. What they're saying there is that a lot of times people thought that, well, my medical record, there should be a document or mention in my military medical record of such disease. But what this is saying, that you don't need evidence in the military record. At the time of service, those guys and gals did not evidence these diseases. And so many of them served only one tour of service, and then they got out. They came home, but then 15, 20, 25 years later, they have some dread disease. So the military record is not the key here. The key here is that they were there. It says, notwithstanding that there is no record of evidence of such disease during that period of such service. So if your family member, your loved one, or your associate died of some disease, it doesn't matter that it was not documented by military physicians in their medical record. That's not the key. What you look for is, it says here, a veteran described in this paragraph is a veteran who during active military, naval, or air service served in or near the Korean demilitarized zone during the period beginning on September 1, 1967, ending on August 31, 1971. And so if that person served in theater in Korea during that time frame, they are legitimately entitled to be compensated. And if they died, if they transitioned as a result of some disease, and like I say, I've got a list of those diseases that are covered, then there's still opportunity for family members or loved ones, and to file a claim with the Veterans Administration and be compensated for that veteran's service. Okay, so it also expanded to clarify, provide coverage for children of certain Thailand service veterans who were born with spina bifida. And so the statute recognizes for those military service members who were in Thailand, they had children who were born with spina bifida. Those also should have been compensated by the government. So it covers a lot of territory, and this is not by all means intended to be an all-inclusive video coverage of all the possible areas where people got exposed. I mentioned those who supported those C-123 transport aircraft. There were people who washed aircraft and cleaned aircraft and transported stuff on those C-123 aircraft, both stateside and in theater, who were exposed. So there's a lot of people in a lot of areas who were exposed to Agent Orange. Okay, let me try to roll forward here. So I've got here a list that's in the statute right now of the covered diseases, those that are presumed to have a service connection. And I'll give you a moment to take a look at those. But I also read in the statute that the administrator, the secretary, can at any time add additional diseases. So the fact that something may not be on this list right now, don't let that be a discouragement, because they can add other diseases as the scientific research reveals that connection between that disease and that herbicide. Okay, and then the last thing I want to do, the implications. Now, let me talk about that, implications. First of all, you do not have to prove the service connection for the covered diseases, okay? You don't have to prove it. The proof is in the fact that you were there during the time frame. You don't have to prove a service connection. You only have to prove that you were in theater during the covered time frames, and the statute, which is United States Code, Chapter 38, Section 38, Chapter 11, you can find the covered time frames. And you only have to prove by medical records a diagnosis of one of the covered diseases. And so whether it was your physician 25 or 35 or 40 years later, you were diagnosed or your loved one was diagnosed with one of those covered diseases, then that's the proof. That's all that's necessary. So what do you have to do then? What you ought to do is, first of all, the DD Form 214 is proof for any military service member without regard of branch of service. The DD 214 says where you were assigned or where that person was assigned, a veteran. So you got to have a copy of the DD 214. It may be in a file cabinet somewhere, it may be in a folder somewhere. But if you don't have one, there are ways to get one through the Veterans Administration if you don't have one. But hopefully and prayerfully you do have one on hand. Then you need to obtain copies of a medical diagnosis of the covered disease. Some doctor, a physician, it could have been, like I say, it could have been 25, 40, 50 years later, a medical diagnosis. In most cases, and a lot of those cases, the death certificate states the cause of death was a certain disease. Those cancers that people died from, like leukemia, they were documented as the reasons for a person's death. Provide proof of relationship to the veteran. So if you were married to a veteran who transitioned as a result of one of those diseases, or you're the child of a veteran who transitioned, you will have to provide proof of a relationship there. The form that you file with the VA is a VA form 21-4138. It's a statement in support of a claim. And then the last thing I would encourage you to do, um, please respond promptly to any VA request for additional information. From my experience dealing with the Veterans Administration, you can have long time frames before you get a result. The wheels of government, for those of us who are familiar, do grind finely, and sometimes it takes a long time to get the desired result. And so be prepared to wait. The VA, like any other governmental entity, is struggling with conducting business in a COVID situation. And so it could be very slow, but nevertheless, don't give up just because you don't get a quick response. So be prepared to wait for whatever period of time that you need to wait. And so I'm going to make a request that I've never made before in doing this video. I'll check the quality of it before I send it out. But I don't know who knows who. I don't know how many people, how many relatives, how many associates. What I'm going to ask you guys to do, if you would, just share the information, share this video, give it to people. If you've had conversation with somebody who's lost a loved one, they perhaps talked about their loved one had a disease that they got from the Vietnam era, the government didn't pay them, pass it on. The Department of Veterans Affairs has got representatives across this country, so there's a way to connect and to get the process started. But it won't get started unless somebody, first of all, goes through the steps, gather the documents, and then submit a claim. And if you would do that, just share it with your Facebook friends, your Twitter friends, your Instagram friends. Share the information. Point people who perhaps were discouraged. A lot of those guys gave up because they got countless rejections and they walked away. And that's what grabbed my heart. They gave up because the government said we didn't kill you or we didn't harm you. But the government did. And I'm not angry. I just want people to be compensated. You can't bring back a person who died or somebody's body has been debilitated because of a disease. You can't reverse that. But my heart goes out to military people who gave it their best, who obeyed the orders, who did as they were told, but got diseased in the process. So please share it if you would, and I would be grateful if you would. Thank you very much. God bless you. God keep you.